Hi, everybody. It's Linda Lorelle, and this is Our Voices Matter. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm really excited to bring this conversation to you today. Tricia Brouk is a globally recognized strategic advisor, award-winning director, producer, and public speaking expert. She is also an author, podcaster, and founder of the Big Talk Academy, where she certifies speakers in the art and science of effective communication. An award-winning documentary about her work with speakers is now streaming on Amazon Prime. As the documentary Big Stages begins, here's what Tricia says. When all voices are heard and everyone believes that their voice matters, we can unite humanity through speech. And now you know why, or at least one of the many reasons why, I invited her to be a guest on Our Voices Matter. Tricia, it is so nice to officially meet you and welcome you to Our Voices Matter podcast. Thank you for saying yes when I reached out.
Oh my gosh, Linda, it is truly an honor and a privilege. And I know we're going to get into it, but we have so much in common. And when I learned that your podcast was called Our Voices Matter, I had goosebumps because here at the Big Talk, your voice matters. And so we get to connect on that so deeply today.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So I'm so glad you said that because I watched, the documentary, and in the very opening moments of the documentary, you say, when all voices are heard and everyone believes that their voice matters, we can unite humanity through speech. And that gave me goosebumps and chills, goosebumps and chills all the way through your new book, which we are going to get into. But the things that we have in common, which just totally blew me away the more I read about you: theater, dance, Buddhism, speaking, communications, general love of life. I mean, I don't even know where to stop at this point, but oh my gosh. I feel like you're a sister from another mister, as they say.
For sure. Isn't it incredible that we met finally?
Yes. Yes. I think the universe finally decided to bring us together. Okay. So I've teased people a little bit. Give a brief synopsis of your background and how you got to where you are right now.
I am from Arnold, Missouri, 20 miles south of St. Louis. And I grew up wanting to move to New York City to pursue a career in dance. I studied dance with Lillian Denoyer and Sharon McGuire Denoyer. Sharon McGuire is still very much in my life. She comes to New York all the time. And my parents made a really good decision, a good parenting decision, by making me go to college, because I was planning to just graduate from high school and move straight to New York City and pursue a career in dance. However, I made a pit stop at the University of Missouri, studied journalism for a semester, and then realized I don't want to be a journalist. I want to be a dancer. So I'm going to transfer over to Stevens College. And that's where I got a full scholarship to go to Stevens College. I did a 3-year accelerated program so that I could move to New York when I was 20 years old, which I did, and started doing the whole thing, waiting tables, going to auditions, and realized I didn't really want to be a starving artist. That wasn't sexy or romantic to me at all. I wanted to buy shoes and live alone in an apartment. I didn't want to have 7 roommates. So I started my first company, Brouk Moves, in-home personal training. And that company still exists. I have clients who've been with me for over 30 years, trainers who've been with me for over 20. Was able to create passive income before passive income was a thing, because I had trainers training my clients while I was touring all over the world with Lucinda Childs, Big Dance Theater. And I had a really incredible performing career. I manifested working with Baryshnikov. There was a poster of him on my wall as a 7-year-old ballet dancer.
My gosh.
So when I was 30, I worked with Baryshnikov inside of the Lucinda Childs Dance Company, toured Europe, danced at the Paris Opera, the Lisbon Opera House, the Austria Opera House, Brooklyn Academy of Music, Lincoln Center, and had this incredible dance career, and knew that I wanted to have closure on my own terms. I didn't want to be a dancer that was limping around all the time, wishing I had another gig. I wanted to go out on top when my body was still serving me. And dancers have a short career.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to produce a one-woman show and perform all the solos that I'd been gifted from choreographers over my decades of performing, and then move into choreography and directing and producing. I wanted to be on the other side of the table, the other side of the camera, and moved effortlessly into film, television, and theater, was working in that medium. And all of a sudden, somebody came to me and said, I want you to direct my TED Talk. And I approached it just like a one-woman show. Blocking, choreography, theatricality, script analysis. And she planted the seed. You should do this. There are people who you can really help. And I thought, this is so interesting. There's a genre of speaking coaches out there. I had no idea. So all of a sudden, word on the street, I was supporting speakers, and I had all these people coming to me because my approach was through a theatrical lens. It was through the lens of being a director. And all of a sudden I had all these speakers and no place to put them. What is the best stage for speakers? A TED stage. What do? I produce events. So I became the executive producer of TEDx Lincoln Square in New York City, produced that event for 2 years, and then realized I needed more creative control because I'm an artist, and stepped away from producing TED events and moved into producing my own events and created the Big Talk Academy, where I realized that my impact as a dancer or a performer was limited to the number of people in the audience and the length of time I was on stage.
Right.
When I was supporting thought leaders who are speaking to thousands of speakers over the lifetime, the ripple effect of who I'm impacting is a legacy that goes beyond the time I'm on stage or the number of people in the audience. And that's when I realized I have this opportunity to really help people use their voice and amplify and elevate the voices they are already using in order to leave a lasting legacy. I, by choice, did not have children. I never wanted children. I am happy to live my life as a child-free woman and be the auntie to my friends' kids. But I realized that the legacy was something that I was missing. And now, being able to support thought leaders in this way, that is my legacy. And being able to be connected to somebody like you, who is also using your voice and empowering others to use their voice, this is how we unite humanity through speech.
It's just such a breathtaking career and the trajectory that it has taken and the impact that you're able to have. Okay, so I want to. You've written other books, but you have a new book out, and it's called "Being Smart is Stupid: Why Embracing the Wisdom of Your Buddha Nature is the Secret to Great Leadership." So I mentioned earlier that we have Buddhism in common. So I was introduced to Nichiren Shoshu Buddhism when I was dancing in a company in Denver forever ago.
Which company, Linda?
Cleo Parker Robinson Dance
Oh
Ensemble.
my gosh, that's amazing. I probably saw you perform.
You very well might have seen me perform. And another little tidbit that I have to share with you is that I actually, with Cleo's company, had the opportunity to perform with Maya Angelou. Yes, with Maya Angelou at the Arvada Center, which I still cannot believe. And Ray Charles. It was just like crazy. It just crazy.
That's
so anyway,
so special.
We'll have to swap. We'll have to do another whole show where we're just swapping stories that we have in common. But I have not continued with my Buddhist practice as I did back then, but I understand what it is. And I was so grateful to be reintroduced to why I loved it when I read your book. So talk about smart versus wise, and what is a Buddha nature?
Well, thank you for this opportunity. I believe that everyone has a Buddha nature. And this book is not about becoming Buddhist. It's not a book about religion. It's a book about Eastern philosophy and how you can apply that to wise leadership.
Mhm.
When I think about Buddha nature, it could mean compassion, empathy. It could mean your inner knowing. And that's why I truly believe everyone has a Buddha nature. Even folks who might not be kind, they still have a Buddha nature. They may just not know how to tap into it yet. So when it comes to wisdom versus being smart, there are a lot of smart people in the world. And there are a lot of smart people leading because they inherited a leadership style that is not wise. And when I started thinking about the third book that I wanted to write, this idea of Buddha nature and leadership was always in the back of my mind, because people always ask me, how is it that you've had a company where your clients have been with you for 30 years? Or how is it that you have the Big Talk, an online personal development company, essentially, where consultants have stayed with you for 7 years? Consultants don't stay with anybody for 7 months. How is that something that you've been able to accomplish? How is it that you started a third company and everybody who you invited to work for you said yes without even knowing what the company was? And I didn't have an answer. I did not go to business school. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in dance. However, I own 3 companies and they're very successful. So what is it about my leadership style that works? And I kept coming back to, it's my Buddha nature. It's my investment, my intention, and my commitment to doing what's right. And that's right livelihood, that's right speech. So I thought, if I can deconstruct how I'm leading in a way that's tactical and not all woo and people are going to, have to go to a mountain and sit on a cushion. That's not what this is. If I can deconstruct this, imagine what could happen if other leaders decided to embrace their Buddha nature. Imagine the communities, the culture, the ROI, the success that they could have, that they could improve on. And that's why I decided to write this book. Smart is what we've inherited. Wisdom is what we can embrace. That is our inner knowing. It is our Buddha nature.
One of the things that I love about the book is that it is peppered with personal stories, your personal stories. And those stories exemplify how you were able to tap into your Buddha nature or not, depending on the situation, right? And then the lessons learned from it. So one of my favorite stories, of course, it's a theater story. And it's the one about the stage manager, who yelled at you in front of the entire cast. I literally, I mean, right now I can feel my heart constricting a little bit, because I could feel through your words and your storytelling, I could feel as a reader what that must have felt like for you. And I was literally holding my breath as I was reading it to see what the outcome was and how you dealt with it. So tell a little bit about that story and the lesson of that story and how it dovetails with Buddha nature.
Well, thank you for saying that you were excited to hear how it ended. That makes me happy that your reading experience was so involved. That story is so interesting. I didn't know then that I was leaning on one of the pillars of my Buddha nature.
Hmm.
And when I revisited that story in the book, it made me realize this is why I needed to write this, because I didn't know I was doing that. And if I can now tell this story and explain to the reader, this is discernment, one of the pillars of Buddha nature and being wise. The story is one of the shows that I wrote, directed, choreographed, and produced in New York City was a parody musical based on 50 Shades of Grey. And I'll start there because you might be wondering, why would you write a parody musical about 50 Shades of Grey? The reason why is because I really care about the work I do and I have intention behind everything. And I'm very, very much involved in social justice and advocacy work. And when somebody approached me to create this, I thought, I don't want to read that book. But if I can write a parody about it in service of the truth, maybe I will. And when I read the book, it is about a young girl who is a college student who doesn't have a computer. She is a virgin and she lets her boyfriend beat her. None of that was okay with me. Zero. So I realized I have an opportunity here to make fun of something that is a really big deal culturally right now because I don't believe in it. I don't agree with it. And that was why I wrote this parody musical. It was a huge hit because I was making fun of it. And I had no idea it was going to be a huge hit. So we had a really long run at the Triad Theater, and then it moved to off-Broadway. Now, for those of you listening, as an artist, as a creator, if you have a show that moves to off-Broadway and has a run, it's a big deal.
It's a big deal. Yeah. It's a
And
really big deal.
It's a really big deal. And I was so proud of this, and the actors were amazing, and it was always sold out. And we had the final dress rehearsal, and the stage manager, we had tons of props in this show, tons. And there was a lot of technical things that had to be accomplished with these props. And the stage manager didn't want to use the props for the dress rehearsal because it meant he would have to reset them all prior to this show. So he would have to do extra work essentially. And when I said we're doing the run through with props, that's when he, using your language, yelled at me. And using my language, he used the F-bomb in front of everyone about me.
Oh.
And in that moment, I became aware of my awareness, which is one of the pillars. And I felt white hot rage. I felt fear. The rage was, how dare you speak to me like that in front of my cast? And then I moved into fear, which was, I'm going to lose the respect of my cast. And then I moved into stillness, which again, I did not know I was practicing my Buddha nature. I was just going through this innate way of being. I called 10 minutes. I called a 10-minute break. I walked out into the lobby and I called my producer. Now, this is a union show, so that we had to follow rules.
Mm-hmm.
And I called my producer, explained what happened, and said, what do we do here? What are the options for me? Because I no longer want to work with this person. And he said, this is a union house. He's a union stage manager, which means you have to either keep working with him or you have to buy him out. And we don't have the budget for us to buy him out. And I stayed quiet and I stayed within myself. I went home and I thought about what would serve my cast. And I said, how much? And he gave me the number. And I said, I'm going to buy him out with my money.
Wow.
And we made the decision and we let him go. And the other part of that fear is, how am I going to find a stage manager by tomorrow so we can open? But I did, and we did, and she was amazing. And the show went on. And it was a big lesson to trust myself and to take that moment of getting still, becoming aware of my awareness. Do not react right now. You are in fear. You are in anger. That's normal. You're in despair. You're having these feelings, but you are not these feelings. And I was able to make a decision that was based on what my team, my cast, my show needed. And again, Linda, I didn't know I was doing this then.
Mm-hmm. But you dissected it and you understand what you did. So you mentioned the word trust, and you said it was a lesson to learn to trust myself. So my question now is, what about, I would imagine that the way that you handled this situation also engendered trust in you from your cast.
Oh
Is
my
that,
goodness.
is that an accurate assessment?
That is such an accurate assessment, and something that I'll never forget. When I walked back in and I looked my cast into their amazing, beautiful faces, and I said, no one will ever treat you like that, because I will never let anyone treat me like that. And we have a new stage manager coming tomorrow. And it was like they all lost 50 pounds. The weight on their shoulders, it went away, and it engendered so much more trust, not only of the leadership, but of the show.
Of course, of course. I love that. In your book, you obviously you're talking about all of these pillars in terms of leadership, but so much of what you are sharing and offering is also, I believe, very easily extrapolated beyond leadership into just how we live our lives, um, particularly at this moment, because of the lack of trust in our institutions, in our media, in each other. What I mean, that's one of the things that I found most profound about this book is that it's not only about leadership, but the same concepts of learning how to be still and not let fear overtake you, and how to let go. It's another one we need to talk about. So much of that I found helpful as I think about my own fear and anxiety. Um, just being an American who is distressed over the chaos and the divisions that we're experiencing. So talk a little bit about how these pillars can help people who may or may not be in leadership positions within their companies or whatever, but can actually use some of these very same tools that you're offering to help them cope today.
Well, thank you for bringing the conversation in this direction. What's going on in our country right now is ego nature. There's nothing about what's happening that resembles leadership at all. And I'd like for your listeners to become aware of the difference between ego nature and Buddha nature. Ego nature is about power, and Buddha nature is about connection and understanding oneness. And we at the Big Talk say all voices matter. And I do stand by that. And it is challenging because there are folks who say and do things that I don't agree with. However, I believe that they have the right to say what they want to say, because I do believe all voices matter. However, when you know how to communicate with dignity, curiosity, humility, respect, and love, then you can be in conversation. And that's Buddha nature. When it's just ego nature and I'm right, you're wrong, what I think is the only way, then we have the chaos, then we have the distress that you're talking about that so many of us are experiencing. So for those of you who are listening who may not be in leadership positions, to think about, am I living my life with Buddha nature, compassion, empathy, kindness, or am I leading my life through ego nature, fear, power, separation? And then decide, which way do you want to live your life? And I can promise you, if you decide to live your life through Buddha nature, compassion, empathy, kindness, love, you will start to attract that same kind of connection, because you'll become aware that we are all connected. And the reality is, We as human beings all experience suffering. We all experience it. It is what we have in common, aside from all dying. We all have suffering in common. And when you think about some of these concepts going into letting go, it allows us to be in a moment of home or presence, which is also impermanence. And hopefully we can let go of the fear. What happens if frankly, the disgust of what kind of leadership is being imposed upon us right now? I have to practice this every single day. I have to practice it because I do watch the news. I want to be informed because my leadership style is to speak up about things. And so I need to be informed, and I have to go inside and I have to think, okay, I'm having an experience of distress. I'm having an experience of, shall I say, rage. I'm having an experience of despair. And how can I acknowledge that and let that go so I can move into oneness? How are we all connected? How can I be compassionate for that person? And it takes practice.
Yeah, that's the part that really hit me, because like you, I have to stay informed, and breaking my sort of news junkie habit is what I call it, because after being on the air for so many years and always watching news 24/7 and being engaged and involved, I have completely changed the way that I consume information to preserve my mental health.
Yes, for sure.
Absolutely. And so the ideas that you talk about, that you just articulated, I find very helpful, because it's a day by day, sometimes hour by hour, minute by minute thing, trying to let certain things go and to not internalize and not to be fearful. And, all of that is just, it's a lot. And I really do want my listeners to know and understand that, again, even if you're not in a leadership position in a company or whatever, this is a book that can help you. It can help you talk to your family, your friends who might believe differently than you do, because it encourages you to come at it with curiosity and compassion as opposed to judgment. And that's huge.
Thank you. I appreciate that reflection. I really do. And it is huge. I have a community member who, his views are different from mine. And I'm so fond of him. I really, really, I just adore him and I respect him, and our views are completely different. And he recently reached out to me about publishing one of his books. And, I have a publishing company as well. And I said, I really, really want to have a conversation about this. And I also want to make it very clear to you that I am a liberal Democrat because I see what he's posting. And I said, you know that, right? Because you're talking about me in a way that's not very nice. And you know that's who I am, right? And he said, I do know that. And I also know that our values align and that I respect you immensely. And you're one of the best leaders I've ever met. And I said, you need to come on my podcast, because if we can have this conversation,
Yes.
we can teach other people how to do it.
Yes. Yes, that's it.
That's it.
That gives me chills. That's it right there. Our values align. What you said before about oneness, we're all connected. We're all the same. I want to talk a little bit about the suffering piece, because you mentioned that. And, in your book, you say that befriending your suffering is at the heart of all wisdom. And you talk about the second arrow of suffering. And I put an asterisk by that because that one really sticks for me, because that was me for 10 years, that second arrow of suffering. And
Tell me more about that. What does that
yeah,
mean?
yeah. Well, the short version is that, when I left my television station, um, it was chaotic. Okay. It was difficult. I felt as though I was being pushed out, and I made the decision to leave. And, because it was such a public thing and I was so tied emotionally to it, and I reacted in a very emotional manner. I mean, I've learned so much about myself since then, but I can remember the day that I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, and I literally sat in my car in the parking lot outside the TV station, and I I cried and I screamed and I literally beat my fists on the steering wheel to just get out whatever it was I was feeling. And after that, I made the decision that I was going to leave. And so I did. And when I tell you that it took me 10 years to be able to talk about that, first of all, I've never ever said what I just said right now. I've never explained or shared that moment before. Um, but it took me 10 years before I was able to tell the story on stage for the first time of what I went through during that period of time, the losses, both physical, financial, mental, the losses and the toll that it took on me. To be able to stand on stage and talk about that, it took me 10 years because I hadn't let it go. It took me that long. And what I wouldn't give to have that time back without having held on to that second arrow of suffering. That really hit me when I read that.
Well, thank you for sharing this with me and with your listeners. I have a feeling that there's someone out there who needed to hear this today. And your reflection and your interpretation of those 10 years is very common. And the hope is that we can consolidate how long the second arrow is piercing your heart, because we're human and we all grip onto what we wish was happening and had happened. And I think that is why we create our own suffering. And now you obviously know, but back then it's okay that you didn't. And for anybody who's listening, hopefully we can expedite you moving beyond the suffering a little bit faster today, because you know that if you are not letting go and you're holding on and you're gripping, instead of detaching from, you are actually continuing to create your own suffering. So if you can let go, and you can let go of what the stories are and the lies are, there's stories and lies that we tell ourselves. And the practice of letting go is identifying what those stories and lies are, and then playing this little game. What happens if? And what happens if I never get another job on television? What happens if, for me, the example was, and this was suffering for me in this way too, I had choreographed my first feature film, and it was with the most incredible actors: Kate Winslet, Susan Sarandon, James Gandolfini, Christopher Walken, Eddie Izzard, Bobby Cannavale. I mean, Steve Buscemi. It was a dream come true. And the film was supposed to be a huge success. It was going to be like the next Rocky Horror. It was going to be a cult classic. I saw my future, and the film was bought. The distribution company was bought by another film company, and it sat on a shelf. It never got distributed. And the pain that I experienced was similar to what you described of sitting in that car. And I realized I was creating my own suffering. again, I didn't know that I was putting this into practice. But when I realized that I was attaching to an outcome that I had no control over, and I was holding on to something instead of letting go and detaching, then I was able to realize, okay, I'm making myself miserable. This is all me. This has nothing to do with the external experience. And then for this book, I deconstructed the what happens if. What happens if I never make another movie? I'll be fine. What happens if the movie never gets released? I'll make another movie. What happens if nobody knows who I am as a choreographer? I'll find another opportunity. And if you take yourself through that kind of game, what happens if you realize it's all fine?
Yeah. And you do that at the end of each chapter, after you sort of have summarized, what the takeaways are, and then you give people some questions and some things to write that help them sort of work through it. I cannot recommend this book highly enough, really. Being Smart is Stupid, Why Embracing the Wisdom of Your Buddha Nature is the Secret to Great Leadership. And I would add to that great living, because again, the concepts, the tools are universally applied. Tricia, I feel like I could talk to you all day, and I'm just so honored that you said yes when I reached out and asked you to be on the podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your story and yourself with our audience.
Oh my goodness, Linda, thank you so much. I'll say yes to whatever you ask me, please.
Oh my good. Oh, don't open that door, because I'm coming through it again. Thank you so much, Tricia.
Thank you so much. And if you want to grab the book, head over to being-smart-is-stupid.com and you can purchase the book from all the different locations.
And we, of course, will link to that in the show notes. So thanks again, Tricia. So much of what Tricia had to say just perfectly aligns with the mission of this podcast, as I knew it would. But it also aligns perfectly with Civil Dialogues and our mission of trying to help people come at their differences from a place of curiosity rather than judgment. And I loved the way Tricia was able to articulate that in our conversation. And again, her book is truly invaluable. So be sure and go to the show notes to get a link to how you can purchase it. And as for Civil Dialogues, I want to let you know we've got a couple of events coming up. One at the end of this month on October 29th in the Houston area, and another one the day after the election, November 5th in Kansas City. And both of those are being live streamed. So if you don't happen to be in Houston or Kansas City, you can go to the live stream to check out what we're doing and join the conversation. Civil Dialogues is picking up momentum, and I'll be sharing more about that on the podcast and on all of our social channels. And as always, thank you for being a part of the Our Voices Matter community. Please like, share, subscribe. You know what to do. Invite others to join as well. Thanks, everybody. Be well. See you next time.